movie we're looking at today is this movie, The Greatest Showman. And The Greatest Showman is an interesting movie because critics look at this movie and they thought, like this movie isn't so great. And I gotta say, my initial sense from the preview was exactly the same, because it's like, you know, Hugh Jackman singing, right? And it's like, I got nothing against Hugh Jackman, but Hugh Jackman is Wolverine, right? From the X-Men series, and Wolverine don't sing, you know? It's like he roars, but he doesn't sing. Like, what is going on? Well, I've been kind of humbled this morning, and I have to confess, this guy can sing. This was a great movie. I love this movie. I'm not sure how many of you have seen this movie. Most of us. Quite a few of you haven't. We're going to ruin it for you this morning, but you know, that's the way it goes. I think the reason why the general public loved this movie, because this movie almost had like this snowball effect where people just began resonating with the movie, enjoying the movie, going back multiple times to see the movie. The reason I think that that's true is because on one level, this movie is everybody's story. This movie is everybody's experience. And what I mean by that is that all of us, you know, maybe just when we were young and we lost it, but nevertheless, all of us have this dream inside of us. And we encounter these obstacles and we fight our way through. And we experience this dream to whatever level being lived out in our life. And this makes for a great story. And it makes for a great movie. And I just want you to take a look at this next clip because it expresses sort of this passion around a dream so powerfully. Just listen to as you watch that. You know, I love to ask the question, right? I love to know what that does inside of you. Because life, our experience of life, is radically different when we have a passionate, burning dream that we are pursuing. And so my first question for you this morning is this: where are you at with your dream? Because this movie, The Greatest Showman, if you haven't seen it, if you haven't heard anything about it, it's actually loosely based around the life of a guy by the name of P.T. Barnum. And we know P.T. Barnum is the guy, you know, he's kind of politically incorrect today, but the guy that did circuses, right? It's like, what's a circus? But, you know, back in the day, the circus had a huge impact on people's life and people's experience. And this movie is about how P.T. Barnum's dream aligns with his life, with his skill, with his passion, with his perseverance to overcome obstacles, to achieve and to experience this dream. And it's really pretty inspiring and amazing as you watch this movie. What I liked about this movie is how this plays out in a number of different individuals' lives. For instance, I think of one group in particular, and they're sort of referred to as the misfits. In fact, at one point in the movie, they're referred to as the freaks, because they have been marginalized by society. Society is kind of, you know, eating them up and spit them out as they have no contribution. And they see themselves really hiding from society because the way that they have been rejected. And what Barnum, at least in the movie, what Barnum does with this group of people is he gives them a platform. And so their very uniqueness, which they have felt rejected for by the society around them, their very uniqueness Barnum helps them to experience is their greatest point of contribution. And so I would just say on one level, what this movie does, it taps us back into how powerful, how important a dream can be in our lives when who we are is aligned with our dream. And what I mean by who we are is this. You know, if we're like 5'5", and we're fully grown, and we think we're going to be a starting forward for the, you know, Golden State Warriors, it's like, I don't think so. It's like, you know, we sometimes say, well, you could be anything you want to be. You know what, if you're 5'5", and you think you're going to be a starting forward for the great, you know, Golden State Warriors, that dream probably isn't going to happen. But when your dream is aligned and congruent I can, use that word, if it's consistent with who you are, that dream can become an amazing thing in our lives. Now, I gotta say this, because I'm watching this movie and there is this question that just kind of hits me, that maybe hit you as well. Because I'm watching this dream play out, and what I'm thinking and what I'm observing is this: how do we passionately follow our dream without having our dream consume us? How do we passionately follow our dream without having our dream consume us? Because maybe you're here this morning and you're like, I had a dream once, and I followed that dream, and that dream, it knocked me down and chewed me up and spit me out. And maybe you're thinking to yourself, how does that happen? Like, how can we feel something so deeply, so strongly, and at times just have it all go sideways? And so the question that I'd like us to answer this morning is this: is there a secret? Is there a secret so that we can passionately follow our dream and not be chewed up and spit out and have our dream consume us? And I think there is. I think I found the answer to that question in the life of a man that, even if you're in church for the first time this morning, and if you are, then it's fantastic to have you here. We're so glad you came. But this guy's name, the name of the guy that I'm thinking about, his name is Moses. And Moses, we're talking about movies. Lots of movies have been made about Moses. I think most recently this DreamWorks movie, called the Prince of Egypt. It's been on Broadway as well. But Moses had such a remarkable life. And you think about this: Moses was born at a time when his people were actually in slavery to the Egyptians. Not only were they in slavery, but at the time that Moses was born specifically, all of the midwives had been charged with putting boy babies to death. It's like, a woman gives birth, boy baby, okay, you kill it, because the Egyptians had this order that no boy babies should live. And so Moses is born at this time, and yet somehow he's protected, somehow he's preserved. And not only is he kept safe, he actually ends up being taken into the Pharaoh's home and adopted and really raised as royalty. It's a remarkable story. But Moses never forgets from where he came. And one day he is about, as best as we can tell, 40 years old, 40 years into life. And all of a sudden he comes on this altercation between an Egyptian guy and one of his people. And Moses intervenes, and in the process, he actually kills this Egyptian guy. And so you think about this, that this guy Moses has this burning, passionate dream to set his people free from bondage and slavery, and he takes matters into his own hands, and he kills this guy, and the result is he has to run for his life. And that period of running, and maybe you can look at it actually as hiding, but that period in his life is actually a period of 40 years. For 40 years, he's hiding out. For 40 years, it's like the dream all of a sudden is on the shelf. Maybe this morning, you think that's my experience. Like, I had this dream. I pursued this dream. And it just all went sideways. And the fact is, if that's been your experience in life, then we just need to stop and we need to go, you know what? We need to recognize and affirm that if that's what's happened, it is one of the most excruciating experiences in life. It's like someone has just ripped the rug out from underneath us, and there's nothing below that for us to hold on to. It's not just like we feel like, well, we failed. I tried this, I attempted this, I pursued this, I failed, but somehow it actually goes so deep in us that
that we feel like we're a failure. Not just that we failed, but now that we are defined as a failure. And the reason that this so often happens in our lives, that we feel like failures when our dreams go sideways, is because somehow our identity, like who we are at the core of our person, gets so tightly wrapped up with this dream that when the dream goes sideways, when the dream goes south, it's like we're left wondering even, who am I? Because so much of who we are is invested in that dream. And this is the very point where Moses' experience, it gets so instructive and so helpful for us. Because, as I said, here's Moses, and for 40 years, like this still, really kind of makes me feel like yikes. But for 40 years, like 4 decades, like 4 tens, in case I'm not emphasizing this enough, right? For 40 years, it's like all of a sudden the dream has evaporated. The dream is gone. But after 40 years, Moses has this encounter, this experience that changes everything. He has what has come to be described as this burning bush experience. And by a burning bush experience, we mean that Moses had this personal encounter with God, that Moses experienced God personally, experienced the presence of God, but also experienced the word of God being spoken into his life. And it's like Moses experiences God, and God speaks back into Moses' life, and he says, Moses, remember the dream. And 40 years have gone by. It's like, dream? What dream? Moses, remember the dream? It's time to get up. It's time to get out. It's time to get going and begin to passionately pursue that dream again. Now, I just want to encourage some of you, because in some ways, it's kind of an awful thought to go, 40 years? Like, do you know what 40 years is like in my life? But think of it from the other perspective. 40 years have gone by. And God re-emerges and speaks into Moses' life and says, it's time to get going. It's time to pursue and begin living out that dream. And if you're not familiar with the story of Moses, then you need to know that Moses is the guy that actually leads Israel, the people of Israel, out of Egypt, out of slavery, through the Red Sea. Moses is the guy that goes up to the mountain and he meets with God, and he brings down what we now know as the 10 Commandments to the people of Israel. Moses is the one who leads the people of Israel through the desert, through the wilderness, to the very edge of the promised land. That's another story. But Moses lives out his dream. He gets to be a part of leading these people that he cares so much about, that his heart breaks for, out of slavery, out of bondage, into freedom and into promise. And so, here we have this connection, right, between Moses and P.T. Barnum and you and I. Moses had this dream that almost killed him. But Moses' experience gives us this insight that you and I can hold on to help guide us and help protect us as we pursue our dreams. And here's what I mean. Because there is this description about Moses that is very specific about who he was as an individual. And it's really just almost a footnote. It's like, well, whatever. But it's so descriptive of this man. It sets this man apart, and such an important quality of his life that has such bearing on living out our dreams in a way that our dreams don't consume us. The passage occurs, or the description occurs at a time in Moses' life when he's leading the people through the desert, through the wilderness, and he's in this moment of conflict, and we have this description. And the description, if you look up here, it goes like this. Now, Moses was very, notice, humble I just want you to think about that for a moment and go, oh, humble. Like, does humble sound like a description of someone that lives out a passionate dream? It's kind of like humble, huh? Okay. More humble than any other person on the earth. Now, I kind of feel, my first thought is, that's an interesting description. Because I don't know about you, but I could ask the question, how do you envision humble? Do you envision humble like this? It's like, yeah, humble is kind of a religious thing. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm going to bow down. It's kind of subservient. Do you envision humble like this? I don't know about that. That's just goofy, isn't it? But maybe that's how we envision humble. It's like humble's a goofy thing. Like, what does it mean to be humble? And actually, if you turn to the dictionary for a definition of humble, it doesn't get a lot better. It doesn't get much more compelling, because the dictionary definition of humble goes like this: having or showing a modest or low estimate of one's own importance. I don't know about you, but I don't find that very compelling. I don't go, you know what, that's what I want on my tombstone, you know? At the end of my life, that's how I want somebody to describe me. I don't think so. But C.S. Lewis, you may be familiar with C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis defined humility in a remarkable way. He said, humility, it's not about thinking less of yourself. It's thinking about yourself less. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. You see the distinction there? It's not that you're minimizing your contribution or your value or what you bring to the table. It's thinking about yourself less. So you're not going through life going, me, right? It's not all about me. It's not all about what I'm doing. It's not all about my role in this. It's not minimizing your contribution, but it's not going through life where it's like, oh, the spotlight is always on me. And this becomes so descriptive of this definition of humility that we have around Moses. Now, if I can, I'd like to get a little nerdy on you this morning, because I came across something this week that I thought, wow, that just gives us such a great understanding of what it means when Moses is described as being humble, and how being humble actually is a guide and a protection as we pursue our dreams, so our dreams don't consume us. I was reading, this daily inspirational reading, picture and reading on Instagram by an online friend by the name of Ozzy Dave. You can look him up, and he has these daily inspirational thoughts, and I'm just like, these are phenomenal. And this last week, he actually talked about this word, humility. And he's really describing humility as it is used to describe Moses. Because he said that this word that we translate, Hebrew word, and of course, what we call the Old Testament, is in Hebrew originally, much of it. This word that is used to describe Moses as humility, anava. I know you're all like, ooh, anava. Like, okay, remember that. So we just say that to somebody and see what they do. But anava actually means this. Look at this description. To occupy your God-given space in the world. To occupy your God-given space in the world. What does it mean to be humble? It means to occupy your God-given space in the world. Are you humble? If you are, it means you are occupying your God-given space in the world. So let me ask you this morning, if each one of us has a space in this world that we have been given by God to occupy, how are you occupying your space? How are you filling the space that God has given you to occupy? Now, as I thought about that, I thought, I think there's probably three good options to how we occupy this space. If God has given us this space, there's three options to how we can occupy our space. And one of the ways that we can occupy our space is like this. We don't fill our space. We just use use a part of our space. Maybe it's just a little tiny bit of our space. It's like we've got this space that God has given us to occupy in life, but we're just taking up a little bit of the space that's been given to us. We're just in, kind of in a corner. We're just maybe in the center, and there's lots of space around us. We've got space given to us, but we're not actually occupying our space. And I realize that there's probably lots of good reasons for that if this is our experience. Probably the best reason that we don't fully occupy the space that's been given to us is because we have experienced such a degree of pain in our life that hurt has made us draw into ourselves. It's like we're just trying to take up as little space as possible because we want to protect ourselves. We've been hurt and we don't want to get hurt anymore. And so, our thinking is that if we just take up as small a space as possible, then that will kind of be a protection for us. But the problem is, then we're not making the contribution to life that we have been created to make. We are not using that space in a way that fully contributes what God has created us to contribute, because He has given us this space in life to make the contribution that He has created us to make. And the truth is that if this is your experience, you may well feel that a part of you is actually dying, because that dream has died. And it's not an issue of the dream consuming you. Rather, it is an issue that dream is extinguished. And maybe this morning some of us go, oh, that's me. That's me. There's definitely a second option here. And the second option is actually the very opposite in a way. It's not that we're just filling up or taking up a part of our space. It's like we are overflowing our space. We are moving into everybody else's space. It's like we want to fully occupy our space, and we want to fully occupy your space as well. It's like, just grab as much space. And so often what happens in that kind of experience is our dream really is running out of control. Our dream really is consuming everyone and everything around us. And if you watch this movie, The Greatest Showman, you see this. You see this. You see that P.T. Barnum, in the pursuit of his amazing dream, he basically comes to the precipice. And he is at that point where he has achieved so much, but he's about to destroy it all. And there is this scene in the movie at sort of this climactic point that expresses what's going on here in Barnum's life, but in our lives, I think, so well. Just watch this scene and listen to the words of this song. She can sing, huh? I'm not sure what that song does in you, but I listen to it, it kind of wrecks me. Because as we pursue our dreams, so many amazing things can happen as we pursue them. But as we exceed the space that God has given to us, as we overreach that space that God has given us to occupy, we can destroy so much as well. And I think that song nails it. Because there is this constant theme, there's this constant bass note sometimes in our lives where it's never enough. Never enough. It's always more, more, more. It doesn't matter how much love, how much success, how much recognition that you get. It's like you're always looking for more. And that quest, that drive even for more, as you reach out of your space into the space of people around you, it starts to destroy even those things and those people that you love the most, the destructive capacity of a dream. And I love the scene in the movie. If you've seen it, you may remember. And I'd encourage you to watch this movie. It's a great movie, but there's that scene sort of at this climactic moment when Barnum's wife, Charity, looks at him and asks him, will it ever be enough? And her final thought, her final comment to him is this: Barnum, you don't need everybody to love you. You don't need everybody to love you. And when you and I go through life with that drive that everybody has to recognize us, everybody has to value us, everybody has to affirm us. Our dream begins to consume us. And so here we have Moses and this incredible dream and this incredible definition of humility as the guide and the guard as we pursue our dreams. That our dream can be all about fully occupying the space that God has given us. Because thankfully that's the third option, is to occupy the space that God has given us in this world fully and well. And when we do that, when we occupy the space that God has given us, then we make the contribution to the world that God has created us to make. And then our dream doesn't consume us and everything around us, but instead it becomes life-giving to us and to others. And so I want to ask you this morning, where are you at as you pursue your dream? Option 1, option 2, option 3. What we need so often is a little bit of perspective, which I realize is sometimes so difficult to find, because if we've been hurt in life, sometimes we just can't see around the pain for life to be anything different than it is. But if our dream is running out of control, it also can prevent us from recognizing the importance of staying within the space, being satisfied with the space, enjoying the space that God has given to us in this life. And I would like to leave you this morning with one question that I hope can put this whole question of pursuing dreams without having your dream consume you. That it can put it into perspective for you. It's a little bit weird, I'll give you that. But Stephen Covey left us this funeral exercise, he calls it. I know, funeral. We love thinking about funerals. Never mind our funeral. But the question is this. Think about, and you can find a quiet place this week, I encourage you to, is sit down with your journal, piece of paper, notes on your phone, and think about this question. How would the people in my life, my friends, and my family, describe my life at my funeral? What would they say? And this morning, if you're going, I don't have a clue what they would say, ask them. Ask them. Just make sure you reassure them, first of all, that you don't think there's anything imminent or anything. You're just going through this process of self-reflection. But ask them about this. Like, how do you, or how do you think people would describe the life that I have lived at my funeral? And here's the thing. Are there any changes that you could make today so that your life is more consistent with what you hope people would say about you? If you can answer that question, and if you can start to align your life around what you hope people will say, then the chances are better than good. Then you will begin living out your dream in a way that your dream doesn't consume you. That you will begin occupying the space that God has given you to occupy in this world. And friends, this is so important, because God has given you this space in the world, that as you live in that space, you begin to experience such a radical difference in life, because it's your God-given space. And in that space, you encounter God and the potential for change that God wants to make in this world through you. Through you. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, thank you for the influence of movies. Thank you how they can wake us up to the potential. Wake us up to ideas. Wake us up to thoughts. Make us even dream dreams again. A dream is such a powerful thing. And this morning I pray for every one of us that we could maybe even re-engage your dream for our life, the dream that you have planted deep inside of us, in a way that we occupy with humility that space that you have given us to occupy, realizing that it's within that space that we hold the potential to make the greatest contribution, the contribution that we have been created for. Give us the grace, give us the power, give us the wisdom and the courage to do that, Father. I ask in Jesus' name.